No, absolutely. The performance on that product has been phenomenal, and it seemed like the timing was right. We launched that product really, which contains Bitcoin and gold, and rebalances monthly based on the relative performance of each.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. Joining me is Bitwise Asset Management European Head Bradley Duke. Bradley, very good to speak with you. Last time we spoke, there was a bit of a September slumber for Bitcoin, but we now have it at all-time highs. What are the drivers behind that? Just seasonality?
That's a good question, Stephen. As we've discussed before, Bitcoin does display seasonality, which other assets do as well. I think the S&P 500 definitely has its own seasonality, with a slump typically over the summer months and then picking up again in October. And this has certainly been the case this October, even though we only a week into the new month. Bitcoin has already gone up about 6% already in the month. And we also we saw massive inflows last week into crypto ETPs like the Bitwise crypto ETPs in the US and Europe, where there was over 5.7 billion in new inflows into those products, which is the highest number that's ever been recorded since these products started to exist. It definitely feels like a bullish environment. And things that we've talked about before are really, becoming stronger, influences that we've discussed before, like, for example, the institutional adoption of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general. At the moment, we're seeing the institutional adoption, and if we just look at two categories of institutional adoption, and that is the inflows into ETFs and ETPs, and then also these treasury companies that are buying and holding Bitcoin on their balance sheets. Those two groups alone now account for over 12 or about around 12.5% of the total circulating supply of Bitcoin. Just those two groups alone. That's before we've looked at, other asset managers or sovereigns or individual investors, or family offices. So this is really a staggering statistic. And then if you look at it again, the institutional investor in terms of supply, we see that those two groups, again, the ETFs, global ETFs and Bitcoin, and the treasury companies, the ones who are holding Bitcoin on their balance sheets, now have bought this year more than 6 times the available the new supply of Bitcoin that's been mined this year. And of course, that supply is forever going down as we move into each halving cycle. The number of new Bitcoin entering circulation halves every 4 years, and we had one of those last year. So we're really feeling the effects of that reduced supply.
So while we have Bitcoin at all-time highs, Bradley, we also have gold reaching an all-time high, breaking above $4,000 an ounce. Any
Right.
correlation? Are these two all-time highs related?
I think they are. I think what we're seeing now is we're seeing really a trade which people are calling the debasement trade. We have this global growth in M2 and in money supply, and that's not just happening in the US. It's happening all over. That's happening across Europe, and all the major developed markets in the world are effectively. There's a growth in this money supply, and that we've seen that from before, that with a delay of 3 months, there is a strong correlation to the price of Bitcoin. So right now, we are, and that is because people feel they want to invest in an asset that's going to hold value over time, and they're increasingly losing faith in fiat currencies and dollar and euro denominated assets, because of this unchecked expansion in supply. And right now we've seen that the price of Bitcoin hasn't followed in the most current spike. in money supply, and we expect that that will correct upwards sometime soon. And of course, as you mentioned, gold's across 4,000 all-time high. And that's, again, Bitcoin and gold are seen as having a similar function, as being safe haven assets and store of value in terms of inflation and debasement of currency.
And of course, we chatted a few months ago, Bradley, about a product that you had launched, or Bitwise had launched, that really included Bitcoin and gold, really to play off each other. But that must be doing really well with both of those at all-time highs.
No, absolutely. The performance on that product has been phenomenal, and it seemed like the timing was right. We launched that product really, which contains Bitcoin and gold, and rebalances monthly based on the relative performance of each, how well they're doing, what the drawdowns are looking, how well it bounces back from a price drawdown. And it has some quite clever mechanism for rebalancing across that to maximize the investor return. That product BTCG we did in partnership with Diamond Partners in Italy.
You're in New York at the moment, Bradley. Tell us what's happening in the US. What's the latest there regarding crypto?
Yeah, so it's super interesting times. You probably read that recently there was a change, because before, up until now, there's only been Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs approved by the SEC in the US. And that is now changing because of the generic listing standards that have been approved. And these basically look at a much larger group of cryptocurrencies, and provided that they meet these standards laid out in the generic listing standard, then the cryptocurrencies can be used for an ETF. However, we are not seeing as many products coming to market as we expected, mostly because the whole approval mechanism has ground to a halt, because as you know, the US government is currently shut down, and hopefully that's going to it's going to open up again soon, and we can start to see products coming out and approvals, and we'll see more, like we have in Europe, a lot more ETFs, and also staked ETFs. And I think the first ones that will come out are Solana and XRP, and there'll be a plethora of choices for investors in those names, and other new names as well that we haven't seen before.
Lots to look out for then going forward. Bradley, thanks as always for your insights.
Thank you so much, Stephen.
Bradley Duke is European head at Bitwise Asset Management.